So it's going to be a very interesting session called The Next Billion, understanding what Indian travelers want. More particularly, what the young Indian travelers want. I do not know. Maybe our very distinguished panelists know. Maybe some of you in the audience know. So let's scratch our head together. Some numbers. I was looking at the statistics. About 25% of the Indians, give me a moment, about 50% of the Indian are below the age of 25 and more than 65% below the age of 35. That means about a billion. That's about almost a billion population, which could be called quite young, below 35. Compare it to, let's say, average age in India is 29, and in China it is 48. See the contrast, 29 and 48. And, sorry, 48 is for Japan, and for China it is 37. So it's still quite a young population. So we are going to address this question from the point of view that, look, is it changing the market needs? And if yes, broadly how? And how we can prepare to cater to this market, which is going to be the market, not only for domestic, but also for outbound. And so I had jotted down a few questions from, I would say a layman perspective, and we would like to hear comments from our expert panel. How this market is changing the needs, broadly how, and are there any changes, specific changes in B2B as well as B2C, and what new trends, if any, are seen in, let's say, online versus brick and mortar, or packaged product versus do-it-yourself, or hotels versus alternative accommodation, or luxury frills versus budget no frills, nature trails and all that, or any other changes which you see. So let me first, you all know our distinguished panel, but let me sort of give you just a head up of about their name and their company name. We have no other than Ankush Nijawan, co-founder of TBO.com, and we have Neeraj Singh Dev. Neeraj is Senior Vice President, Thomas Cook, and on my left-hand side, Lokendra, on my left hand, Neeraj, and on my far left is Lokendra Saini, Chief Operating Officer of Is My Trip. So we will get perspective, 360-degree perspective from a B2B as well as B2C, and mainly online B2C and B2B, as well as brick and mortar as well. So let's first address the question that, look, what are the broad changes, if any, and how do you prepare for those changes? What changes you see from this new Indian perspective? Can I start with you, sir?
Hello. Hello, everyone. First of all, Mr. Agrawal, thank you for inviting me here and speak on this topic of, what is the preparedness we require to address the needs of, the new age traveler. And I think broadly, my idea of, the Indian traveler is a little complex. It's not very simple because India, we try to paint India in one brush, which is not the right way, because India is divided into many territories, many states, and every state, every zone has different habits, different spending habits, different wants, different food habits, and different spending power. So I think apart from that, India has largely two, the categories of markets. One is, which is emerging one, do it for yourself. And the other one is do it for me. So broadly, these are the two categories India operates into. And do it yourself market is very well serviced by the OTAs, the travel technology companies, travel aggregators. And do it for me segment is very well serviced by the companies like tour operators, travel operators. I call Thomas Cook as a hybrid, the travel company. We have online as well as offline presence. So we try to match the customer requirement basis what the customer wants. And we don't force customer to, choose the channel. We give him the option of choosing the sales channel, what they want to operate in. And I think from a change point of view, adaptability, changing requirements, very sudden changes in the rules, government rules, health rules, COVID rules, and suddenly adopting, being an international player to a domestic player in case something goes wrong. So I think being an all-rounder and changing very quickly with the requirements, with the changing needs of the customer is something which, I would recommend to ourselves and to others as well.
Sure, appreciate it. So Ankush, how would you open?
So I will just add on to what Neeraj said. And at TBO, we probably serve every partner in every segment in the industry, right? The young India, as you rightly said, Sanjeev, one, if I break the pyramid, about 160 million passports today in India, 26 million trips happened in 2019. Assuming the young today, 25, is part of those people who have never traveled but do have a passport. One, let's not discuss Delhi and Bombay. If I take the whole demographics of India, I strongly believe the young today in tier 1 is very tech savvy, but as you move into tier 2 and beyond, there's a lot of awareness, but they don't know the accessibility to buy and where to buy. I think that is where a content from a company like ours or a company like who does something like us, I think is extremely important for the offering for the young. Plus, it's not just typical, मेरे को 2 nights Dubai जाना है, 3 nights Thailand जाना. I think the young today is not looking at these things. Their aspirations, what they have today, is to do skydiving. They want to do paragliding. They want to go to Rishikesh, for example. They want to go and see the gorillas in Rwanda. Now, these are names and holidays which I never used to hear, being in the business for almost 20 years now, which I hear now. So I think the whole excitement and the lifestyle is beyond just staying in a fancy hotel, do a typical shopping, do the Dow cruise, or let's go to Phuket for a holiday. I think that has completely changed. So the young today is very, very excited to explore new opportunities. Absolutely tech savvy, but I think the book still happens a lot offline. And I always say, I've got 2 of my great panelists, offline, online, tour operator. I always say, $11 trillion ka bazaar hai. $11 trillion is the market size of travel ecosystem in the world. The largest player is not even 5% of it. So the coexist will happen, be it offline, online. There's enough for everybody to grab. The only thing is be a master of what you're doing. But a company like us, especially after COVID, has realized to introduce every product, because today the content is the big winner through the tech, in my opinion.
How would you open up?
Yeah, thank you first of all for having me here. I think, from the context where you started the discussion, that holds a lot of relevance, that India is the youngest capital of the world. In a way, we have possibilities from both sides, not just that we have no dearth of travelers looking for a variety of options, but we don't have any challenge in terms of those who would like to try out something new in the travel space as an entrepreneur or as a business person going forward. So I think it could not have been any better than the stage, the way it is set right now for the travel in India. I see also, a huge opportunity ahead of everyone in travel to understand the ever-changing behavior of this new generation. They are, extremely sensitive on time, not very cautious on cost like it used to be a decade ago. We used to, plan our one single international holiday once a year, and for which we would plan it for like 3-4 months before we would finally, plan a location. And then we will look for the most cost-effective way to make it the, the best pocket-friendly experience. Experience wasn't a word as well, which used to be used then. But now it is all about experience. Now they want everything in a jiffy, and they want to understand how quickly can somebody give them the most elaborated way to understand what they really want to go for their next travel. With the new changing dimensions of fintech in this whole ecosystem as well, is adding more to the fuel of traveling. You do not really have to save a lot or have a lot of money in your bank account before you can plan an international travel. A lot of fintech solutions give you that option of now immediately go for a travel and then continue paying it over a period of time. That's another boost to the whole economy. And third, I think the way the overall, the income pattern has grown over time. Obviously, because of India being one of the most active IT hubs in the world, that also has given a little bit of additional residual income for users now to experiment their holidays. So all in all, I think the space is developing extremely well.
It's quite interesting. So one interesting question strikes my mind is that, look, when this international travel started in a big way, and tour operators mainly were catering to specialized requirement of Indians. Like, I remember when I started all this, we used to see advertisement, dhokla in Rome, in jalebi in Paris or something like that, Indian food was a very important component. And that's why, and vegetarian food was very important component. And a lot of, this catering to Indian tourists was quite specialized from that point of view, Do you think that the young is more globalized? Like, the young Indian can be catered by anyone, anywhere in the world? Or you see that, no, there is still a very specialized component which only an Indian operator would understand differentially and could cater to even the young Indian population?
So I think it's a very relevant question. Honestly, I don't have any, the 100% correct answer to this, because we are also evolving as we are addressing the, the Gen Z customers' demand. And I think that broadly on the Gen Z, what we have experienced in last 5-7 years is, one, the fundamental change is, see, the older generation, people used to save money for travel. There would be a lifetime of 20-30 years of working, then saving money, and then start planning for travel. So the fundamental difference now is people, they are traveling on the fly. They may not even have that disposable income, what it requires to plan an international trip, but then, they would fall into travel now, pay later, the time is now. And probably this also has to do with, that the needs that roti, kapada, makan is already addressed for most of the Gen Z customers. Second is, I think the access to the information, what they have currently, and that thrill of do it yourself, and that adventure of going for local cuisines, local, the food, the bar hopping, local pub hopping. So that Indian food, that used to become like, for example, a must for the travelers probably 10-15 years back, is an optional item today. So people would want to go, people won't want to explore the local food, but, on top of it, icing on the cake, on the last day or middle of the, the tour, if you are able to give them a top of Indian restaurant in that particular place, I think that can be an option. But Indian food per se or other, the typical matrices which are attached for with Indian travelers, they are not, the mandatory, they are optionals, I would say.
So Ankush, from your vantage point in the B2B scene, do you think that Indian market is very specialized, and so, only guys like you can cater to that market? Or if you flip it, if you can cater to this market, you can cater to any market anywhere in the world?
See, fundamentally, India is not a tough market to address. If you speak to a lot of hoteliers and outbound destinations here, one, language is not a barrier with us. Fortunately, most of us speak good English. I think barring some part of the population in India, especially in West, is where the food becomes a big thing. I think most of India is pretty okay with food. So I don't see food being a challenge. However, now because of our outbound getting stronger, I've realized with working with so many stakeholders, especially in the last 1 year, everybody is now kind of getting the food in their menus because they realize, if you want to get an Indian, the food is an extremely important part. But I think when it comes to payment settlements, English speaking, I think that way, I think Indians are very easy to manage, unlike the Chinese market in particular. Two, depending which family you're coming from the young. If you're a traveler who's been with his parents many times, his demand will be extremely different than a guy who's coming from a tier 5 village, let's say in Punjab, who's never been abroad. So his behavior will be very different, and the way the way our travel partners need to address will be extremely different because he's very non-tech savvy. He wants everything to be, done by one of the counselors or the travel partners. But if one who's already been to, let's say, Europe 5 times, he's looking at different things. He wants to, gastronomy for him is a big thing. He wants to do a cruise which is kind of breaking the icebergs, for example, right? I think it's a mix of everything in India, but I think food is the only thing which I believe is important because of the vegetarian component. Yeah.
So, Lokendra, if you look at it from a different perspective, that what you do, can it be done by any international player, like, they can come and compete with you? Or if you flip it, can you compete with any other international player anywhere in the world serving their geographies?
No, I think this is a very, very relevant question. And, I have a very simple answer to this, that you cannot solve problem by using your hands and feet as much as you can solve it with the use of technology. I think as in how we are expanding ourselves in all dimensions, data is becoming more and more important. So I think any organization or any particular business which has to scale, grow, and over time, create a niche of its own and also to capture a market share, it has to start understanding the user behavior very, very quickly. And based on those user behaviors, they need to create the duplicates of those behaviors in wherever that could apply. See, I could say that, for example, India could be, specifically looking after food. But food is common for everyone. Only the recipes change, right? Everyone will have a taste of food, and everyone will have a taste towards a certain kind of dish for that matter. But who are those users? And who are those users who do not go for food but go for adventure? And who are those users who do not go for food or for adventure but who just go for an experience of a location or a place where they are? Now all of these are typically different kind of user behaviors and personas that as an organization and as a business one has to understand to start working in order to creating a definite edge over others. And basis this, I think you are also going to get a very, very great amount of help in building the right kind of product for them. So I see technology as a solution to all of this, combined with data science and a little bit of machine learning on it.
Very well. Let's turn to what could be $1 billion question. Pre-COVID, we used to hear that Airbnb is the biggest disruptor, and alternative accommodation could almost outcompete the hotel accommodation. But it seems from a bystander perspective that, look, we maybe it's COVID or some other factors, we don't speak that much of Airbnb as a threat, alternative accommodation as a threat, or is it like, what I mean to ask is that how do you see this conundrum between hotel accommodation, good old vanilla or frail hotel accommodation versus alternative accommodation?
I think Airbnb was an idea, which of course a brilliant idea, and they came and they secured a place which there was a need for it, and they came and they secured that place. Does that mean that they are going to replace by far the hospitality chains or the hotels in the world? I think answer is no, because especially in India, from an India perspective, what we see is the amount of what India has seen as a story from a hotel's point of view in last 2 years, because of COVID and other rules, the hotels are booming. Till now, if you see the effect, finding a hotel availability across all chain hotels is extremely difficult. And with the pace which the hotel development, the infrastructure development is happening on the hospitality side in India, and the thrust the government is giving, this space is going to multi-fold. And in India, I would still say we are staff hotels rooms. We don't have sufficient room inventory. I would say, dare say that we are one of the poorest, country from a hotel inventory availability point of view. If we compare ourselves with other countries, similar size, definitely we are ruled out. But even then, we can't compete with places like Thailand, places like countries, half of our size or 1/4 of our size. The number of hotels, the chains, the availability is much higher in those places. Both ecosystem will coexist. As I said, India is a huge market. There would always be demand for people who are explorer in nature, who are little more adventurer, people who want to immerse in the local, the culture, stay with the locals. That demand will continue to grow. But will that explode? I don't think so. But there will be a continuous growth in that segment. But I think from a hotel point of view, that growth we have already seen exploded. My sense is it will continue to grow more than the alternative accommodation piece.
Sure. Ankush, purely from your vantage B2B perspective, what do you see as the size of this alternative accommodation market? Even if it is like a very rough, like, okay, 10% or 20 or 30 vis-a-vis hotel. And do you see them coming on B2B channels like yourself?
So, one, I don't think it is more than 10% to answer your question, and I'm sure my other two panelists will agree with me. Airbnb is a great model. I'll definitely give that credit. As I said, the piece of cake is so large for everybody to grab. It also depends who is the traveler. Is it budget traveler? Is it first-time traveler? Is it an HNI traveling? That will actually depend on what you're going to purchase, be it a hotel or a villa, or tomorrow it can be alternate accommodation like Airbnb. Personally, Indians, to go to a place where they're technically leasing a house, is a concept which is coming now. I think COVID has taught that more. But I think pre-COVID, I would have not been as bullish for an alternate accommodation. But I think post-COVID, because people have realized to stay for 3 weeks in a villa in Phuket, do work from home, I think that renting / staying at somebody's house, is a concept which is coming. But I think it's more with the younger generation and the guys who are a little budget traveler. But I think the HNIs and the regular travelers are still going to pick up a hotel accommodation. And I'm sure this demand and supply, which all of us are witnessing right now, is completely warped. But I feel in 18-20 months, especially in large cities in the world, I think the supply will get corrected and there'll be some rational pricing, which is abnormal right now, in my opinion.
Very well. Lokendra, you agreed? At best 10%. And do you see them coming on platforms like yours in B2B, like, online mainstream platform like yours or TBO, the alternative accommodation? Are they already there? And how big is this?
To answer this question, I think the larger problem lies at the root level, which is when you see the budget amount which gets allocated towards travel and tourism. It was around 2,700 crores last year. And you'll be surprised to know only half of that, or even lesser than that, was consumed. Now, looking at the dimensions of a country like India and the density of population that we live in, which brings so many possibilities of alternate accommodation in the form of homestays, villas, other form of rental accommodations and everything, I think we still have to scratch the surface. We haven't even touched that. The bigger challenge lies that whatever we have at least available with us, can that be brought online? Can that be standardized? Can there be a certain level of basic hygiene that can be maintained on it? Can users be sure about the security part when they book those hotels or those accommodations? I think if that can be taken care of even by 20 to 30%, in next 2 to 3 years, we will have enough number of such accommodations getting listed up. See, as a platform, at the end of the day, we do not want to get into a hassle of any kind of customer-related security issues or other such challenging issues which bring a challenge for us to address it. So we would like to first see whether what level of readiness do these alternate accommodations have. And to get this done, I think a larger amount of effort has to come from the infrastructure development side, at least from an enabling standpoint.
But just to add to that, Sanjeev, there are a lot of Western Europe renowned cluster chains, cluster apartments, which are now integrating, and there are few of them who already written their APIs with us. which is pretty popular. You want to be in an apartment facing the Lake Geneva, for example. So these are getting there, but I think they're very, very small yet. As Lokendra said, I agree with him completely. But I think sooner or later they will come. But it will be more organized. There's no security issues, and I think something which is it has a decent brand value and standing.
Very well. So, anything else you would like to say on the topic broadly, because we have about 5 minutes? Anything else about the broad topic, what the next billion would want?
So, I think, as I said, previously, India is, I think we are lucky. The timing is absolutely right. The people who are in business, people who are in sales, or people who are growing in this generation in India, I think we are in the right phase. And, for the perspective, in India, we only have 10% of the population with passports. So imagine the penetration if you compare this with, the Chinese markets or US markets, they are at 50-60% of the population having passports and traveling abroad regularly. So I think there's a huge headway available with us, and everybody has a market segment available. If you remain in your niche and you get, you choose your segment and be around that segment and push around that segment, every segment available has a huge potential in India. People, we have, the colleagues in the industry here, people who are specializing in cruise, they built a huge cruise business, for example. People who are building, who are living on train business, for example. You have OTAs who are specializing on train. So I think every segment is deep and very less penetrated. And the segment, as Ankush said, the English language, I think language is a big unifier we have from a content serving point of view. And I think from here onwards, I feel it's only way up. And on a lighter note, I think there's a lot of noise about TCS in last 24 hours. Not the Tata consultancy service, but the tax deduction at so. I hope, the ministry takes, notice of it and addresses some of the concern, and to ensure that there's a level playing field between domestic inbound as well as international outbound tourism from India.
Any closing comment, very briefly?
So Sanjeev, I'm very lucky that I'm going to witness the next 10 years at my life, which I'm pretty okay with age still. I think India is extremely, extremely well poised to be one of the largest travel operators, be it domestic or outbound. And the simple reasons, we all know 1,000 aircrafts are being ordered and to be delivered in India in the next 5 years. We all know India is going to be the third largest economy by 2028. The more money you make today, a lot of young today want to travel rather than buying houses, etc. 42 billion is the forecast of tourism spent till 2032. We have a little more than 2,700 crores approved by railways yesterday. We have got 100 airports which are just greenfields right now. You tell me the statistics. If any country has this advantage, what India has. And as an economy, we are the fastest growing. We are still growing at 6.3%, anticipated to be 7 next year. And to be the largest economy, even if it is 10%, as Neeraj rightly said, there'll be so much in that 10%, which I'm sure there'll be 50 million travelers by 2027. So the pie is just growing. It's just that everybody has to take a pole position and be a master of something what he or she is good at. Segments apart from leisure, be it sports, be it cruise, be it MICE, is not going to stop. And one fact which I'll tell you, India was the third largest buyer for FIFA, and we don't even play football. So what does that mean? And I must tell you, somebody from London has written to me today, can we talk about the World Cup and the Test series happening in 2024? I mean, obviously this is high-end holidays, right? But there are people who are buying. There were 9,000 people on the final day at the FIFA. And the tickets, the cheapest was $4,000. So I think India is in a very solid position, and I think everybody's on the right track, barring certain obstacles which Neeraj just said on TCS. I'm sure somebody's going to look at it, but life has to move on. End of the day, we are not here, we are not the lawmakers here. So fight what we have, etc.
Despite that, we have to work despite lawmakers. Yes, anything you would like to, on the closing comment, quickly?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what's already being said. I think largely most of it has already been covered. Travel for India is the next big thing that is, in the making now. The only thing I'd like to add to it is that, again, going back to the same philosophy that we still feel that technology hasn't really paved that deep into travel and tourism. as much as it has gone into other spheres of the domains in the online ecosystem. I think if you still go out today, on every street near a railway station or a bus stand, you'll see like 10 operators sitting out of there and making decent amount of money. I mean, that says that there is a lot of fragmentation which is still there. If that can be worked out in a way that, I'm not in favor of removing all of them, obviously. That's also a great engine of economic growth. But can there be a way when all of those things also can be made highly automated? A more robust kind of a technology platform can be built for them. I still feel we are miles away from making ourselves, extremely automated on a holiday package side of business. We today even, I'm not too sure out of 4 of us also, how many of us just simply go click and book and go, right? I mean, there is still a thought behind that, why not speak with someone and get something preferential? I mean, that should not be the case. If there is something which is present online is all what you can see, like you do it on the Amazon or, you just go and buy it straight away. So that is one thing which I think is going to augment the growth at a more rampant pace. And I think that is something which I am extremely looking forward to.
Absolutely. So, if there are any interventions from the audience, you can come forward. I'll be happy to hand over the mic to you. Meanwhile, to sum up, for me, the biggest takeaway is that we talk about this population dividend. It is huge. Such a huge young population can only be an opportunity in itself as a consumer, but also as an entrepreneurial opportunity for, especially for India, because we speak English and we know the tech. So what we could do here, probably we could then one day export all over. What stops us from being the travel agent or tour operator of the world? Anyway, some of the services we could be rendering as a back office BPO or that kind of stuff. And probably, we would send some of the big ones. Of course, one takeaway is also that to cater to this young population, you'll have to be quite, adventurous and globalized and different in outlook, because their needs are going to be different. But all this gives us and one big factor that in the short term we discussed in the morning that China is sort of facing a lagging behind, So this could be an additional kind of, जैसे बोलते बिल्ली के भाग का छीका कि additional opportunity coming due to certain events in the past, which would have a short window of maybe a year or so, when we could if put it all together and leapfrog into being the travel agent of the world. With that thought, I would like to thank my distinguished panel, Ankush, Neeraj, Lokendra. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give them a big applaud. And yes, if you have anything to say, please come forward and very short, briefly introduce yourself and very objectively say.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ashwat Vyas. I run a travel company called Amavi in Hyderabad. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my 4th time at OTM. Mr. Sanjeev, I must say you're doing a great job. It's a pilgrimage for us every year to come to OTM. Great thoughts, everybody, first of all. So my question is, Lokesh, taking off from what you were talking about, how people, this question is to everybody, how people do not click and book a package. What I want to know is from Mr. Neeraj and from you, since you have your online packages available, what volume do you have people actually purchasing with a click of a button every year? Secondly, what kind of, what is basically stopping people from, going through that process?
So we could take questions together. Someone else was interested. Yeah, please come forward. Very brief,
Hello.
quickly.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Aman. So I have a question very directly to Mr. Lokendra. So I recently saw that EaseMyTrip is getting into the offline model, okay? And where, of course, they are looking at integrating that online thing into offline, because that's where the objective looks like, to have a long-term perspective to penetrate into tier 3s majorly. So I wanted to understand, the perspective on that, because of, as an offline agent or as a curator, of course, you want to look at, how things are and then how, the market at the tier 2 or tier 3 markets are, that way.
Understood.
Thank you.
Understood. Yeah. Anyone else? You come here. Come. Yeah, this mic will. Oh, you can speak.
Hello.
there.
Hi. This is Mayur from Be Happy Trip. I just had a question. Oyo had just put that Varanasi is going to be a trend, or many things are happening over there. If you can just think about your company wise, what is the trend, which destination or which targeted population you are trying to follow for this 2023 individual wise, domestic or international? We would like to know that from you.
Oh, that's too general. Okay.
So I think the first question the gentleman asked, actually, this is a stock market question. Okay, so I think why people don't book packages online in India? Largely one, in India, the online commerce is largely limited to a particular ATV, the average ticket size. And the tour package, because it is made of different components, you have hotel component, flight, you have transportation, guide, food, etc. So generally the price of the package product is high. See, when you do a click on the pay button, you would want to take, a one layer of assurance from somebody who can speak to you. So we call this as an assisted online service. So before you click, there's an assurance of what the component includes and what kind of the service will be offered you on the ground. So it is called assisted online service. That's why I think the linked is the second question somebody asked. There are two kind of companies you would typically see. One is internet born, digitally born, right? There were OTAs which are digitally born. Then they realized, no, digital is not the end of the world. India is hybrid. You need an excellent click and brick model, You need a phygital model, physical and portal model. So people like Lenskart is an excellent example, if you've seen. They started with online, they captured that market, but then realized they have hit the ceiling. Then they went on to the offline stores. That opposite is a company like us, Thomas Cook, for example. We have been in business for 188 years. And we started our online journey 8 years back or 9 years back. We realized we have hit the ceiling as far as the distribution physical is concerned. We need to go to, the online distribution now. So in India, if you have to win, because the market you serve, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, you will need a combination of click and mortar. I think that would be an ideal model to work on.
Ashwat, I think the biggest challenge, apart from what Neeraj is saying is absolutely bang on, is also the supply, which you are actually going to map all the dots to complete the transaction, doesn't have technology. That's the biggest challenge, which I'm sure Lukendra is going to say the same thing. The supply is so fragmented, non-tech savvy is where people like us have a problem to integrate that to become a seamless click and book. So I think adding to what Neeraj had to say.
No, absolutely, Ankush. I totally agree with that. We are living in a world of, extremely high-end digital evolutions taking place. And then we are operating in a business which is full of inefficiencies. This is a clear case of that, right? I know at the back of my head that there is somebody who I can call and he may try out from calling someone else. And eventually there is a possibility that I can get something which is, unheard of. Maybe. I don't know. Why is that? It is simply because, the fragmentation is to an extent that it has diluted the whole concept of online. Online is what typically online means is that, this is one place where I go and get the best in, at whatever price that they are ready to offer it to me. And there is a sweet spot for business and the buyer for that. But in case of travel and holidays specifically, it does not happen. Now, the way people book their flight tickets by click of a button does not happen in holidays. Why? Because they know more or less, the flight ticket is going to be here or there the same. But at least there is a platform who's going to assure the cancellations, reschedule, all of those notifications will come. With holidays, there are no components like that attached, right? Once I booked a holiday, okay, my holiday is booked now. Now I have to just go travel. There is no difference that a platform gives versus a retail agent sitting in a store. Unless I'm able to bring the differentiation, that if you book it through me, you may be paying 10% extra, but I'm going to assure 15 other things that are going to ensure that whenever you travel, wherever you travel, your travel is going to be fully secured. So all of those components are lacking right now. You know, we are still working. So the only thing what we have done is that packages which were told by a person sitting at a desk has been brought online. The rest, everything remains the same, right? Why would I pay anything extra when I'm not getting anything extra? I have to be very clear about it. So that differentiation has to be built in. And that's where the real change in the product definition and the way it is being sold has to be brought in by the companies.